So I wasn't gonna really talk about this, but I feel like I should because I'm gonna get a little more, I guess, in depth with this situation. But what I noticed that I've seen recently, and I know maybe some other people have witnessed, there's a lot of racial issues that have come up in the Olympics, that have come up in everyday life, watching how people are dealing with this pandemic and how a lot has been revealed. And so I really do truly believe that the racial reckoning is not over with, and that there is not only the racial reckoning, there's the racial national reckoning, and a world racial reckoning that is happening. And there's a reckoning that is happening in general, not just solely on just the race alone, is how people have treated just the world, how they've taken care or whether they haven't taken care. We're seeing high temperatures, heat has escalated. There have been many deniers in climate change. We are seeing unusual activity of like rodents in Australia. There's like this explosion of mice, rats, and that are also in New York. We also have seen um, where there's flooding in New York subways. Um, there has been some issues regarding how people are living in communities where there's a growing number of homelessness that is happening almost as right now as we speak, where people are being evicted, people are being displaced, having to move, are having to double up with family members. And so all this is happening in real time, and disease, one virus that mutates all as a result of COVID 19. And now we have Delta, Delta Plus, we have Lambda, and who knows what else is out there. There's many other issues, mosquitoes that are carrying something so deadly, a poison. If they bite you, it can cause paralysis and even death. Malaria's coming back, and probably some other things. We see an uptick of violence, and it's not just in the U.S., it's in other states. And so we have members of a heavily armed black militia. Who would have thought? In Massachusetts. But listen how they're treated, as opposed to all these other hate groups that we've seen. You don't really hear anything happen until they actually have done something. But here, this members of a heavily armed black militia shut down traffic on Massachusetts interstate for a period of 9 hours. Now, this article had came out. This is by J.L. Cook. Okay, and so it's a group of heavily armed men who say that they're part of a movement that does not recognize the laws of the U.S. were arrested on Saturday, and this was after a 9-hour standoff. Now, see, this article has been out, and I don't think too many people have witnessed it, but it was July 4th that this article came out. And so that was right during the holiday time for some people, and for others, the time just to kind of sit back and reflect. And so this standoff with the police that shut down parts of Massachusetts interstate. And so the group of 9 men were reportedly in two cars that stopped in the breakdown lane on I-95 in Wakefield with their hazard lights on around 1:30 a.m. when police stopped to assist them. So the police said the responding troopers saw that they were wearing tactical or military style uniforms, including tactical vests and body cameras. Some had long rifles, others pistols, or some combination of both. So Massachusetts State um, uh, I believe it is Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. No, Massachusetts State Police. And so Christopher Mason, I might have been right, said that the men had identified themselves as being a part of a group known called Rise of the Moors. And so the group's website describes them as Moorish Americans dedicated to educating new Moors and influencing our elders. So their self professed leader wanted very much to be known by their ideology is not an anti government, Mason said, but our investigation will provide us more insight into what their motivation and what their ideology really is. And so 11 members of the Rise of the Moors were ultimately taken into custody without incident, according to NBC Boston. And so the Boston Herald reports that Mason said police used negotiation and tactical maneuvers to apprehend this group from the Herald. So he said the cops, who described as a dangerous incident, contained the men to the woods off of the I-95, and he didn't elaborate on what the group wanted, saying he didn't want to propagate their ideology, though he said that they wanted to leave the area without accountability and that they wanted attention. So uh, States said that the heavily armed men were claiming to be from a group that does not recognize our laws. And Mason said the men said that they were on the way to a Rhode Island to Maine for a quote unquote training on the 4th of July weekend. And so there was little further information available about what this meant. And Maine State Police wouldn't say more than acknowledging that they were aware of the Wakefield situation. So, according to the Herald, Rise of the Moors is based in Rhode Island, and it's largely made up of black members. During the standoff, two members of the group had held a Moroccan flag, which the Southern Poverty Law Center says that it's related to someone who identifies the Moors, believing there is a 1787 treaty between the U.S. and the Morocco that grants them immunity from U.S. law. So that treaty does not exist. And so the SPLC goes on to describe Moors as an offshoot of an anti-government sovereign citizen movement, which is believed that they get to decide which laws to obey and which to ignore. And so this, I guess, is a posting by Anaridis Rodriguez. So I've expressed to you multiple times that we are not anti-government. And so an armed uniformed man speaking with an MSP negotiators in the middle of a standoff of I-95, as is being live streamed on IG account for the Moorish Constitutional Convention Committee. And so there's video to this, and so I'm not going to play the video. I'm just showing still frame of this freeway, or this interstate, in other words. But in a YouTube video, which is currently unavailable to the watch in full, the leader of the Rise of the Moors said that wasn't the case with the particular group. And so a video posted to social media on Saturday morning showed a man broadcasting on I-95 near Wakefield clad in what appeared to be a tactical gear. We are not anti-government. We are not anti-police, but we are not sovereign citizens. We are not black identity extremists, said the man who did not give his name, but said he was from a group called the Rise of the Moors and specified multiple times to the police that were abiding by the peaceful journey laws of the U.S. federal courts. And so the man said that the group was on the side of the road early in the morning when the police had approached them. And so we were afraid, so we got out with our arms, said the man. The man has said, and he referred to the group as the Militia in a separate video, saying that they had intended to travel peacefully to Maine. So the peaceable journey law That group reference is the video allows people to transport firearms through the states that don't hold a valid they don't hold a valid permit in, as long as they are permitted either by the permit or constitutional carry in both the state of origin and the state of their destination. But as the Herald reports, state police asked the men for their driver's license and firearm permits, and they either didn't have them or didn't provide them. More from the Herald. And so, although the state police didn't go into detail about the negotiation tactic beyond listening to the group's ideologies, and taking their time, former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis told the Herald he imagined the members surrendered because um, he, yeah, that because the police reasoned with them that they be able to argue their case in court, even if they disagree with the police officer's assessment of the situation that was present. So he said it's normal for the police negotiators to work to build a relationship with these men. So while Ryan declined to go into the detail about the nature of the charges facing the men, Davis speculated that they could end up facing charges relating to failing to show the firearm license, disorderly conduct if they used fighting words, or disturbing the peace if the officers had to enter citizens' businesses and yards or homes to secure the area. So I got a lot of questions here, man. A lot of questions. Guess well, see if we get the answers as this whole thing continues to unfold from here. So that's pretty much the article. It's like 5 minute read. But you see here, there's a video. I don't believe it's still there. It's probably just within this article because I guess didn't want to circulate it too much. So I guess if people start to investigate a little more and start to read about this group in particular here, they will find out more information about where they're from and what their premise their mission is. And so I'm sure with every group they have some type of mission or a mission statement of who they are. So, having said that, this is out of the root. I'm gonna let this video go. It's interesting, but I believe a lot of, in reference to this, you're gonna see a lot of different groups, not just this group, but there's a lot of different groups that are gonna come out of this pandemic. The fear that has been happening, that has been circulating about, the end of times, and whatever people believe that they may have to fight for their rationing of the survival of just having food and shelter, and maybe water, and a safe place to stay. And so you'll see when people are afraid and they fear that we're coming to a point where things are getting crazy. Um, Whenever you have long lines, when you have a disease, crime goes up. There's a lot of fear out there. All these different ideologies, the way people, some got vaccinated, others didn't get vaccination, and then you also have free vaccination, and now it's offered in pharmacies. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten either email or I've gotten phone calls just with the local pharmacies here in the LA County region stating that CVS, Rite Aid, some of these places offer free COVID shot, but not now at a point where you see people that are resisting getting the shots. I spoke to a woman earlier this week. She said she got the Moderna shot and she heard some of the side effects. Now, there have been some side effects that have been taken notice, that some children, if they get the shots, that it has something to do with heart issues. And then in the beginning, early on, when they started out, there was some shots that were being given out, and some people were getting really strong reactions where they were feeling woozy or real tired and sleepy, or they felt sick, or maybe they ended up with something else, a complication, or they died. Yeah, some people that died. They said that they might have already had health issues, and so there was no guarantee that people would stay having the same reactions. Everybody's body's different, of course. And so there's a lot of fear out there. Some people think, believe it or not, I know somebody that said that they had ran into somebody that said that they felt like the COVID vaccination shots, if they injected in you, that it has some type of nanochips that they're inserting inside of people so that they can track you even more so than we already being tracked by cell phones and technology and what have you. And outside cameras, surveillance and stuff. So there's this whole issue around surveillance. So there's so many conspiracies and theories and everything that are going on. So it's really scary times that we're living in when you have a pandemic. So it brings about all like members from militia groups from, just here in south of Los Angeles, we have groups out here, not just the malicious groups that you see right here, but I would bet we have some of those militia groups here, I'm sure. But we also have, and they're probably their whole thing is gearing up in case something happens. But for what we've been seeing, maybe race war. We've been seeing a lot of that in organizations. What I've noticed here in South of Los Angeles, a lot of black and brown people have been evicted. You'll see all up and down Vermont, all up and down Venice, under the freeways, downtown Los Angeles. You see Skid Row has exploded like almost everywhere right now. There's a fight to try to contain the homelessness instead of giving homes, which they have tried efforts to do some of that, but that hasn't worked. And so there's been a lot of conversation swirling around that whole issue that some people don't want housing because they have drug issues and they're too far deep into their drug habits, their behavior, and they don't want to follow rules. If you go into shelters and go into housing communities, there are certain rules that they set. Those people, if they don't want to do that, they rather be on the street where they can just be free to do drugs and crime activity and things like that. And so that's some of the topics that have come out. Plus Venice Beach, that came out about that issue. And so with all this chaos going on with the homelessness and race issues, brings about these members of these groups. And so I've been seeing even people on the corners that have been promoting, certain types of, how would I say it, cult religions, that are popping up all over the place that are pretty much they are trying to indoctrinate people to kind of unify for whatever their agendas are. And so it's pretty scary. Um, you got a lot of these groups that are popping up, and then when you get involved and you find out who these groups are, they have a lot of issues, having to do with maybe misogyny, maybe violence, um, or maybe with sex. They might believe, you know, almost like um, how the Waco, Texas thing went down, where you have one guy that's leading the group, and he thinks that all the women, all the wives, and all the girls should submit to him, or something like that. And then you have groups where they're extremely overly militant for whatever reason, and their thing is waiting for some big fallout so that they can arm themselves. So it's a lot of things going on, and it's not just in black communities, it's also in the white communities that we see, where we have a lot of hate groups that hate people of color, they hate people who are black. And so that's probably what's bringing a lot of this stuff out. And so it's really problematic. So it's like you don't control one thing, then you're gonna have all these other things that are gonna come out of all of this. And I believe that's what's going on. I mean, people want to defend themselves if they think they fear that there's going to be no necessary need um, met. Like, you have a lot of people that they might be paying their rent, but they might have lost their job, and now you get evicted all because of something that wasn't your fault. And so that brings about a lot of fear. And so when you have fear, this is what you're going to get. And so, I mean, look at all of the stuff that's happening. I mean, you can't not see that this is not going to happen. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And so it's like, It also raises more stereotypes of the black boogeyman syndrome. So just because you see this incident here doesn't mean that there's like a whole bunch of people that's just waiting in the shadows, waiting to, come at But what we have been seeing is a lot of racism towards black people and people of color and people of marginalized groups. Um, People that are Asian being attacked, and the media sometimes they paint those pictures and they try to put other races against other races. I've seen that, and so a lot is going on. There's a lot happening, and so I thought this article. I saw this like a week ago, and I looked at it. And I thought it was unusual because you never really hear about black militia groups, but think about it. These guys didn't even get a chance. If you really paid close attention to this article, notice they apprehended them right away. But when you have like groups that are white militias, they get to go to the Capitol and storm the Capitol and cause an insurrection. And it takes like maybe weeks, maybe months to weed through all of those people. And they don't have this type of fall out where they're held up for about 9 hours. They're apprehended and they're questioned without even doing anything. And so that shows you the difference too, how the society treats people based on race. And so I thought I would bring this up. This is an important thing to look at when you think about it, because if it is a black militia, think about it. Just the word black militia, that just strikes fear in the hearts of maybe white people who are, maybe they harbor racism. They won't come out and say it, but look at how they treated these men. Already they was on all over their whole program. They wanted to make sure that they apprehend them and that they incarcerate them with a quickness. But when it's white people that are doing this thing like here, they seem to kind of get away with it, and they get maybe they might get a fine or a ticket, and they're able to move about their way. And so, having said that, I'm gonna let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for listening.